So, hi guys, welcome to the Football Stop, where I'm delighted today to be joined by Fav from Tickets and Slabs on Instagram. Hi Fav, how are you today?
Hi, Steve. I'm really well, really honoured to be here. So thank you for the invitation.
It's fantastic to have you here. Obviously, today's conversation is going to be around kind of like associated with sports cards still, but you're someone that's been collecting. We'll call them stubs or tickets, so like match day tubs and stubs and tickets. I'm going to do that all the time today. So I suppose just start off by telling us why, and how have you kind of got involved with this over the however long it's been.
So I think for me, I've been collecting for about kind of 8 months, probably right in the thick of lockdown. And I think, like a lot of people, I've discovered the hobby largely as a combination of through boredom, being stuck at home, having probably a little bit more disposable income than we used to because we're not spending it on things like holidays. Um, and I guess stubs have, for me, taken over from cards as one of the things that I search for, largely because some of the cards that I think I'd be going after for some of these players would probably be out of reach for my kind of budget. So I think, for me, a little rule of thumb is that I try not to spend over maybe a couple of £100 per purchase, if and that's right at the upper end. Usually, kind of, most of my purchases are kind of two figures, probably even one at a lot of the tickets and stubs level. Whereas for cards, I know that kind of you get into things very, very quickly, and it's a case of if you want certain cards, you kind of have to fork out quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how I've gotten into the ticket game. I think it was more uh, a kind of discovery by accident, whilst I was searching for a couple of things, and yeah, that's how it came together.
Awesome. That sounds good. So there's like I mean, it was your account was one. I came across it and saw a particular ticket, and we'll talk about that in a second. And I was like, wow, this is something that I hadn't really thought about before. I'd seen a few people kind of putting posts out about tickets and stubs and things like that. And I just not really given it much thought, but it seems like more and more there's a bit of a crossover between sports cards and stubs, tickets, whatever you want to call them. And ultimately, that shouldn't be kind of like, there's a reason for it. It's sports memorabilia. If you like collecting sports cards, you're probably going to like collecting memorabilia. And are you with the feeling that there's an opportunity for people in ticket collecting, and that in terms of like financial aspects?
Massively. So I think just having a look at so I brought along a few of my tickets, but some of the costs that I'm looking at there, kind of there's a lot of debut tickets here that I've not spent grand sums of money on. The vast majority of these purchases are under a £10 sort of sum. And kind of when you're comparing what you would be spending for an equivalent rookie card for some of these players, it just gets out of reach very quickly. So I
Yeah.
think the barrier to entry is really low. It's kind of a case of what I think a lot of people will struggle with is kind of putting the effort in that sometimes needs to go into kind of finding some of these tickets. It's not always straightforward. I mean, if for instance you're looking for, I don't know, David Beckham's rookie card on eBay, for instance, a lot of the time you could just type David Beckham rookie in, and you'll find several hits of which one's probably likely to be the right one. With tickets, that doesn't happen. You've got to kind of do a bit of research to find out what the game was, when it took place, and what to do when you draw about a blank. It's not always as kind of straightforward as this is the game that David Beckham had his first kick in, and therefore someone's going to advertise that on eBay. So yeah, there is a bit of kind of thinking outside the box that you need to do when you're searching for tickets, but that's part of the joy of it. It's kind of a treasure hunt all of the time.
Yeah.
And that's what I really love about it.
Yeah, I think it sounds fascinating. I must admit, after seeing a particular ticket of yours, and we'll go on to that in a second, the first thing I did was go on eBay and was like, I wonder how easy some of these are to find. So like, as I imagine everybody listening to this will probably now go and do, they'll go onto eBay, search Pele World Cup ticket, Maradona World Cup ticket, Messi rookie. Do you see what I mean? Like all the big names,
Yeah.
and there's nothing. Like you obviously have to do a lot of work to dig down. And I think there's like, I have a big appreciation for that. I think that's awesome. And I think something else I thought about was, I mean, ultimately with tickets, they are limited by the very nature that they are a ticket to a game. And
yeah,
obviously, if it's a Barcelona game, you've got a fairly big crowd. But I mean, when you start talking about games back into the 50s, 60s, and earlier, then what are the chances that these tickets even got kept? Really interesting topic.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think it differs depending on the manner of the game as well. I find a lot of the time. So, for instance, if it's an international or a final, you might go to that game as sort of, you know, a punter, and you probably keep that ticket. You might there's probably a greater chance that you're going to keep a final ticket than or an international ticket than kind of, you know, your to kind of, you know, your generic championship sort of game that you might have 20 of a year. So a large part of it kind of depends on behaviorally kind of what you might do if you're attending that game anyway. More often than not, I think people don't recognize they have tickets that might be of value. They might have stuffed them in a program, might have scrunched them, put them in their pocket. They might end up in the bin. So, you know, you're right. Sort of somewhere like the Nou Camp, you might have 120,000 spectators there, but realistically, when you take every one of those people out of the equation, how many people are you really looking at that have that ticket still in their possession?
Yeah.
Kind of dwindles quite quickly. So yeah, I think a lot of it kind of depends on the manner of the competition. So internationals, cup finals, sort of European games tend to be a bit easier to attain. Domestic games are probably the hardest that I've found. So tends to be kind of, you know, a bit hit and miss. Sometimes you get lucky, and sometimes, you know, you'll be searching for something forever, or certainly for the last 8 months, I've sort of found to no avail. So yeah.
That's so interesting, because like, just from coming from my perspective, with somebody that knows nothing about collecting stubs, I'd have kind of thought that the World Cup would be more difficult than the domestic leagues to get hold of. But what you've just said makes absolute sense. So I suppose we'll talk about, if it's okay with you, we'll talk about the thing that captured my attention, and it was
Sure.
the you know what I'm going to say, it was the Maradona ticket.
Yeah. We've got it right here. So
just tell us a little bit about that. It's a bit of a museum piece. I think you point out in your your post. I think I completely agree. I think it's a museum piece, a fantastic addition to any collection. So tell us about it. How did you get hold of it? What were your challenges, and just what process did you go through?
So I think I have a list of kind of a bunch of tickets that would have been debuts for players that played in Serie A. And I'd kind of assimilated this information over quite a long time. And my tactic was usually to go on eBay. And obviously, if you go on ebay.co.uk, you're only going to find English vendors. But if you go on ebay.it, you often come across Italian vendors of tickets and ticket stubs. And there seems to be quite a big kind of subculture of this sort of stuff. So, for instance, one of the tickets that's still out there, because I've seen it as recently as kind of like a week ago, is Alessandro Nesta's debut ticket. You can pick up for about €3 or €4. It's there, and I haven't chosen myself to go and pick it up. But what you often find is that there are a few key sellers that tend to have, you know, thousands of tickets that they put up onto eBay. It's usually the same with cards, actually. You know, you might find one vendor keeps coming up. You've recognized that eBay username beforehand. And so this happened a couple of times, and I kind of got in contact with a few of the people, and kind of, you know, luckily the people that I contacted kind of had really, really detailed catalogs of all of the tickets that they had. You know, in one instance, there was this sort of 70-page Word document that was sent to me, which was kind of incredible, because and everything was alphabetically laid out. But then, you know, you had alphabetical, and then you also had the season in which the games had taken place. So kind of incredible. And you know, the amount of effort I think that had gone into just creating that document is amazing. But one particular seller that I got talking to was based in Naples, and I just thought I'd try my luck, because right at the top of this list of tickets that I'd wanted, alongside, like, you know, Paolo Maldini's debut for AC Milan, which I'm no closer to getting, was Maradona's debut for for Napoli. I think this was in late October, so it had been around the time that he had been admitted to hospital with sort of heart trouble, and it was at the time I was kind of the opinion that it's like a needle in a haystack. But I think again, behaviourally, if you think about it, Maradona arrived at Naples as a superstar. He was already well known on the world stage. There was, you knew who Maradona was if you were
Yeah.
a football fan. And yes, he won the World Cup a couple of years later, and that's probably what he's most fondly remembered for. But he arrived a superstar at Naples, and it kind of, again, that sort of feeds into this. If you knew that Maradona was a superstar when he arrived, and you went to the first game that he ever played in, do you think there's a slightly higher likelihood that you might have kept that ticket? I suppose I played off of that, and luckily this person that I contacted was really well connected in Naples, and he said, I know someone that's got the ticket. It's in pristine condition. We can kind of negotiate with this sort of stilted English that we were kind of conversing with by email. And I kind of said, well, look, this is the ballpark that I'm kind of working in terms of values, and the ballpark was kind of just into the three figures rather than kind of in two, and that was largely guided by the fact that I'd made a couple of purchases previously for Cristiano Ronaldo's first ever game for Sporting Lisbon, and Lionel Messi's first game for Barcelona. So those are currently at PSA and they're waiting to be graded. And it's the same stuff that you'll have heard of with cards. These things just take a while because of the delays that are there. Not going to go into that. We backed and forth for a really long time, actually, because it was a case of he didn't himself own the ticket. It was a friend of a friend almost, and it was a case of, I'll get back to you in a week. And then things started to move really quickly. And when they began to move really quickly, it was a case of, right, do I just go for it? And even if this guy is trying to scam me, I kind of only lose £200. And all of the things that you really shouldn't do when you're transacting with someone online, like send them a bank transfer payment, were kind of what came into play here.
Right.
And fortunately for me, it's sort of come off every time. I've done this a few times, but I'm sure I'll get my fingers burnt at some point. Fortunately here, it didn't happen. I got a picture of kind of the ticket. He sent a scan through, said, this is it. I'm going to send it really securely, and it arrived kind of a week later. And it just stayed in my collection probably for a couple of days, and then the news of Maradona's untimely passing emerged, and sort of I was kind of caught in this, oh my God, I've kind of got this ticket which is almost too hot to handle suddenly, and I didn't really know what to do with it. So and this is again one of the idiosyncrasies, I suppose, of ticket collecting, is that for card collecting, you have lots of subgroups. So, if you want to submit a card to PSA, you go via a graded gem if you're based in the UK. You might even think about self-submitting, but usually you're discouraged from doing that. With tickets, that doesn't really exist. That infrastructure isn't there. So you kind of have to do it yourself. And that's what I did. I just sort of packed it up, ready to go. Registered mail over to the US, sent it kind of express, which is their 20-day service, and there's no word of a lie, it was done in 5 days. So it was kind of unheard of that you could get a turnaround that quick, but it was done in 5 days, and yeah, here it is. I mean, it's kind of, I don't know if you can see see the ticket, but it's kind
so does that have the, so if you're listening to this via podcast, then you won't be able to see this, you need to go to the YouTube channel, but for the guys that are on YouTube, is that intact then? So when I looked at this on your Instagram account, it looks like there's things that should have been ripped off. So was it not used?
Yeah, there was so my understanding with Italian sort of tickets is that they sort of come in this little checkbook of kind of almost, if you're a season ticket holder, you'd have a checkbook full of like these individual tickets, and they
Yeah.
kind of rip them. Now, I don't honestly know to you why there are actually. You're absolutely right. There are two sort of perforations that could be torn off, and they're intact. I don't honestly know whether this is a used or unused ticket. Am I kind of, if I was to hazard a guess at it, the one thing that indicates that it was a used ticket is the fact that it's kind of been stamped sort of
Yeah.
Tribuna across there. But other than that, you would thought that ticket's not even been used. It's probably in as good condition as any of the tickets I've ever managed to get, and it's over 35 years old. So I mean, I don't know how, but this guy had managed to find this ticket, and through some sort of lucky twist of fate, me having this conversation with him at the right time at the right place, it's ended up in my hands. And
Awesome.
yeah, I really don't know what I'm going to do with it. It's one of those that sort of it's even more hot to handle now because it's sort of encased, and I kind of look at it and I like kind of pinch myself that it's
Just
mine.
treasure it. So
yeah,
I suppose the first thing is, if you are watching this, and I know people that do watch some of my videos are like collectors of many, many years. So if you do know anything about this Maradona ticket and know why there are the perforated edges and like just any information about it, then please put it in the comments below, and I'll make sure that I share that with Fav. That'd be really great. So I suppose the next question is, you've obviously got that Maradona ticket. You've mentioned Ronaldo and Messi, which are already on their way to PSA. So what else have you got in this collection of yours, which seems to be growing incredibly?
I can tell you what's at PSA at the moment. So I've got Messi and Ronaldo's professional debuts. I've got Neymar's debut for Barcelona. I've got Andres Iniesta's debut for Barcelona. I've got Paul Pogba's professional debut for Manchester United. That was like a League Cup game against Leeds, actually, of all places. So, what else is there? There's Gianluigi Buffon's professional debut, and Alessandro Del Piero's debut for Juventus. So it's kind of, those are the ones that are at PSA at the moment. They've been there for months, actually. So I didn't send them Super Express or anything like that. They're in the economy. And, as you'd understand, they take some time. But I've kind of got quite a few here as well that are yet to go. And, at some point in the future, they will go. And I've kind of ended up sort of grouping them in odd sort of brackets. I mean, I can go through them if you'd like, and show you what I have.
Yeah, just give it a bit of a description for people that listen on podcasts. But
Sure.
I think that sounds awesome. Yeah.
So in front of me, I've got this, which is Lionel Messi's Champions League debut. So this is a game that took place against Shakhtar Donetsk, but perhaps its profile has kind of risen again because of the Lost Rookie series from Top. So I was sort of fortunate enough to kind of, I don't know, fortunate or unfortunate, because it's not really a rookie. I was fortunate enough to pick up one of the ones with an autograph, but for me, it's kind of like really lovely to be able to sort of pair these tickets with their respective cards as well when you have the opportunity. And all right, it's not a real card, but it will do for me. So that's one that will be going. And this is another one of my sort of crown jewels that I have here is it's Bayern Munich's first ever game in the Bundesliga.
Wow.
Which so Bayern Munich weren't acceded to the Bundesliga at its inception. They only became a sort of full member after gaining promotion from sort of, I think, a second tier league. And there was quite a lot of political history about why they should have been in, but because of the way that the teams had been ranked, they didn't make it at its first iteration. So this is technically a ticket to the first game that Franz Beckenbauer, Sepp Maier, Gerd Müller will have played in the Bundesliga, which is, for me, again, it's that sort of piece of history that I've kind of accidentally come upon.
That's incredible. Yeah, I love that.
So it's a really lovely one. And then kind of, there are a bunch of tickets that I've got that are sort of more to do with they're not necessarily professional debuts. They're more when a player becomes so synonymous with a particular club, it's almost like the natural one to go for. So
Okay.
a good example of that is, so this one here. I've got Thierry Henry's debut for Arsenal, and yes, he played for Monaco, Juventus before that. But for me, if you think of Thierry Henry
You
and
think of Arsenal, yeah.
you think about Arsenal.
Was
So
that
yeah, I mean,
£22, a £22
it
ticket to
was.
Arsenal as well?
It is in 1999, which, if I may say so myself, is still a rip-off. So
Yeah,
it's kind of, it's still quite a high price to pay
it is.
for going to a football game. And then, there's a bunch of other tickets. So, professional debut. So there's this one here that I've got, which is Wayne Rooney's professional debut for Everton, before he kind of scored that sort of goal that he's really well known for, that against that sort of invincible Arsenal team, the one that sort of has a bit of a deflection that no one really talks about, but kind of it's again quite a nice one to have, especially in light of the fact that he recently retired.
I
And
know.
it's not always football as well. So I found this one actually just lying around. I've had it for a really long time, but I mean, I might as well show you. This is an Olympic sort of cycling time trial ticket from London 2012, but it's sort of signed by the gold medal winner, Sir Bradley Wiggins. So it's
Oh
kind of
wow, that's
so
awesome. Yeah, I love it.
it's sort of you can kind of carve out your own niche a little bit. And actually, Olympic tickets are sort of one of those things that I think there is a gap there again for. So very recently, I've been kind of looking at sort of Floyd Mayweather Jr., for example. I was looking at his career, and like a lot of boxers, he began life as an amateur, and was at the Atlanta Olympics, and kind of there are tickets that are floating around. Unfortunately, not the particular one in which he will have made his sort of Olympic debut, but I think that's another space where you can kind of have some real kind of joy actually, finding out kind of those key events that you think about. So Usain Bolt breaking the 100
Yeah,
meter
yeah.
world record, that sort of thing they're out there. It's just, can you find them and get people to part with them if they have them?
I was
So
going to
yeah,
say the
it's
search must be much wider than eBay. Well, a bit like soccer cards now, football cards now. To really get hold of the rare stuff, let's be honest, going on eBay now, there's just too much competition for it. You need to be going into specific marketplaces within the world. And is that the same? It sounds like from your Maradona experience that it's very much the same.
it's very much the same. So actually, the best example of that is the Messi and Ronaldo tickets that I bought, that actually sent me down this rabbit hole almost of collecting tickets. Both of those games took place in Portugal, and Portugal kind of has eBay, but it's not used very widely. So it was a case of trying to find out what marketplaces exist in Portugal, and then using a lot of Google Translate to negotiate with sellers. My perception is that these are tactics that people use when they're negotiating with card vendors as well. And every now and again, you hit the jackpot, and it's a case of got to be hopeful that the transaction sort of comes off. But yeah, I mean, there've been a few false starts, but yeah, certainly I think it's very similar to the way that you might look for ticket for cards. I suppose the parallel I would say is, if you're going to look for, say, your Ronaldo rookie, your Cristiano Ronaldo rookie, that sticker was published in Portugal. So why would you be looking on ebay.co.uk for it?
Yeah,
I mean, it's sort of like, making that job a bit easier for yourself. It's kind of understanding why it wouldn't be on ebay.co.uk, not expecting someone to do that legwork for you, and then thinking about what you need to search overseas in order to find those kind of rare gems or kind of diamonds in the rough. So
yeah.
yeah, that's sort of how I've approached it. But my understanding is it's very similar to how people hunt down some cards with great success. So
That's,
yeah.
I think, like, this is kind of like, I'm finding this fascinating. So I hope everybody that's watching and listening to this is finding it as fascinating, because it's not a conversation I've had before. So give us your top 3 what's on your wants list out of interest, if you'd like to share that. If you don't want to share it, I completely understand.
Absolutely. So for me, like right up at the top, it's Paolo Maldini's AC Milan debut. So it's a game that took place in, I think, 1985. And it took place, I think, between Milan and Udinese. It was a game that took place, I think, at Udinese. That is a ticket I really want, largely because I think it's one of the first ones that I thought, wouldn't it be great to own that? And this is a guy that's known for being a one club man, and I suppose with myself having grown up, I'm kind of that generation where he was the one of the iconic centre backs.
Oh, he was incredible. Yeah, absolutely incredible.
So that's right at the top of the list, and hopefully one day it will come up. Then I suppose thinking more modern, I think there are a few. Gosh, there's just so many that I can think of off the top of my head that I want. I'm lucky here that I've got Alphonso Davies' Bayern Munich debut ticket, which is actually really easy to find. It's kind of a couple of euros, and if you search in the right place, you can find it. But what's pretty impossible to find is the game in which he made his Vancouver Whitecaps debut, which was, I think, against Orlando City, if I'm right. I might be wrong off the top of my head. But it was an away game, so it took place at Orlando. And, what are the chances that sort of an Orlando supporter is going to keep their ticket for a game against the Vancouver Whitecaps? It's just so small. So you find exactly the same mechanics at work there with newer games, because people just won't keep the ticket. And if they do keep the ticket, are they likely to put it on eBay? It's just like kind of, your chances diminish at every level.
Yeah.
So that there are a lot of modern tickets that I'd really like. And then I suppose the other bracket is cup finals. So this again tends to be things that I haven't really looked into in too much detail, because they tend to be the tickets where there's the biggest premium added in. So largely because, if you're a Manchester United fan, who wouldn't want a ticket to the 1999 sort of final against Bayern Munich, where you win it in 2-1 in extra time? And if you're a supporter, you might keep that. But for me, the ticket I'd most want is probably the 1962 European Cup final, which sort of took place between Benfica and Real Madrid. Off the top of my head, I think Puskas scored a few, Eusebio scored a hat-trick, and it just sounds like an absolutely incredible game when you look back on it.
Mm-hmm.
The final took place in the Netherlands, but I'm told that hardcore Benfica collectors can't even find this ticket. It's like gold dust. So there's a lot of kind of thinking outside the box that you'll need to do with a ticket like that. And
is that one that I saw on your? I think it was your Instagram account. Was the game played in heavy rain? Was that the game?
I'm not sure it was my Instagram account, but it could well have been, actually, thinking about it. But
and obviously ticket damage. If the game is played in torrential conditions, obviously the chances of you getting a good ticket,
and it's one of those rare tickets that sort of, I think, you can find the program for it relatively easily, but you can't find the ticket for love nor money. It's sort of really difficult to find. And, I think before I got into all of this collecting stuff, I used to collect Champions League final programs, and I had almost like kind of, the vast majority of them, apart from the ones that were really, really expensive. And I'm pretty sure that 1962 was one of the ones that I did have. So it follows that kind of, if you've got the program and it was relatively easy to get, why is it so much harder to find the ticket? But you're right, maybe it's the torrential rain, or it could be so many reasons.
So if anyone knows where the Benfica 62 ticket stub is, let us know. So you kind of got me thinking then. So you mentioned the Alphonso Davies Vancouver Whitecaps ticket. And one of the questions when I put it out to Twitter, what they would like me to ask you, one of the questions that came in was, what was the impact of the modern day kind of non-tickets? Essentially, people are using phones now, so there are no tickets. And I just wondered whether perhaps have you looked at that being a game where there was tickets issued, or
So that's a really good question. I think it's really difficult for me. Well, as in, I haven't found out whether that information exists as to whether it would have been a digital ticket. It's very possible, but that's the reason why I will never find
Yeah.
this ticket. Um, I think, by and large, you have a mix now of kind of print at home or tickets that are really issued in paper form or mobile tickets. And I think, this is going to, as much as it pains me to say, it's probably going to become a bit of a dying art. But it's something that I think, as long as you're looking kind of before sort of 2015 for a lot of these debuts, I think they still do exist in quite a large number in paper form. So yeah, I'm sort of hopeful.
Well, it'd
But
be
yeah,
interesting. And again, I think there's a lot of Americans that tune into tune in. I'm not a radio station, but you know
yeah,
what I mean.
yeah,
That listen to this, I think. And again, if you are someone that knows about Vancouver or Orlando and knows about the ticketing situation, please let us know in the comments below. That'd be really interesting. I suppose again, thinking outside the box, even if they do stop tickets and like make it a digital ticket, like there's the potential of getting hold of maybe executive tickets and things like this. So again, you've just got to explore, or you'd explore other avenues, I suppose, but obviously it gets a lot harder. So when it comes to storing these, I noticed that you don't obviously have traditional top loaders. So this is again really topical at the moment because Tops have just released their best of the best, and
that's right.
they look very much like sleeves that would fit. So I'm sure people are dying to know what you are using, Fab.
So that's a really good question because these were impossibly difficult to find in the
Mm.
UK. These are Ultra Pro semi-rigid, I think ticket sleeves they're called.
They're designed specifically for this purpose, right? I see.
They're specifically for this purpose, but you always find tickets that are in odd shapes and sizes, which I mean, that would struggle to fit in a postcard
I was
size
going to
top
say
loader.
yes.
I mean, it's it, it it's actually extraordinarily difficult to put some of the tickets in them because you're almost leaving absolutely no room for mistakes. So if you can see the top and the bottom of this particular one,
Mm.
this is Robert Lewandowski's debut for Bayern Munich. But if I mean, there's almost absolutely no margin for error whilst you're inserting that ticket,
No.
which makes it kind of like a bit of a nerve-wracking exercise in
Yeah,
and of
yeah, yeah.
itself. So, but yeah, they're quite difficult to come by in the UK. They do also make a top loader style version for it. I've heard some people using. I think Ultra Pro may make currency holders,
Right. Okay.
so those tend to work quite well as well from what I've heard. But I've been quite fortunate. I kind of got a big bundle of these and haven't run out of them yet.
I suppose you've just got to
Yeah,
be willing to play around. And I always think like sometimes if you are willing to put down money on these assets, then you also need to put money down on protecting them, and
yeah,
don't shy away from that, guys, because that's
yeah.
such an important thing. That that's brilliant. So what was I going to ask you? So have you seen prices rise like alongside cards in the same respect?
It's it's a really good question. I think it depends a lot of the time on how these tickets are marketed. So one of the things that I observed um, relatively early on was after I bought my Messi ticket, the rookie ticket, um, was that there were a couple of listings that popped up on eBay, and those were for quite a lot more money than I paid for mine. Um, we're talking kind of four-figure sums, and I suppose the frequency with which a lot of these tickets come up is still so uncommon that it's hard to gain any real trends going on. But it tends to be the case that if the person who's selling it knows the significance of the ticket, then you're going to be paying a premium for it usually. Whereas, I mean, so I'm almost ashamed of the Shakhtar Donetsk ticket that I showed you earlier. The
The Messi
Messi's
Champions League one, yeah.
Champions League debut cost me £4. It's like absolutely no money whatsoever, and
Wow.
it's to kind of get an early Messi like card, you're forking out so much money
Hundreds, yeah.
for kind of, yeah. And and to me, that's just not money that I can afford to spend on stuff. So,
No, yeah, and
so,
I
so
think
for me,
that's
yeah.
why it's so valuable to have you on this and having this conversation, because I do think there are so many alternative investments, alternative opportunities for people to kind of still share that passion and enthusiasm for the hobby alongside soccer cards, at an affordable price, I suppose, and getting pieces of history. And whilst modern cards are relatively affordable, so if you want the latest kind of Tops or Panini cards, you can afford them, especially the kind of like Tops Now Instants kind of thing. But when
Yeah.
you really want a piece of history that's kind of iconic, then this is maybe something that people can explore.
Mm. I completely agree. I think I'm actually really really fond of the Tops Now series. Specifically just talking to the Champions League series that's been out this year. I've been trying to collect every single one. And a large part of why I'm trying to collect every single one is because I know I'm getting them at the lowest price point available. I'm not having to go via a third party to get
Mm.
them, at an inflated price, because that kind of just sucks for me. I kind of remember going to my corner shop and just buying football stickers for 25p, and
Yeah.
actually a little part of me dies when I have to fork out a lot of money for a card. Whereas with tickets, it's not been like that so much. It's been a case of, do you know what? Like, so many of these are just tickets that I'm going to keep forever because they never cost me that much in the first place. It's
Mm.
not like I'm betting to zero here. It's a case of they were inexpensive purchases at the time. They bring me a lot of joy when I've been searching for them and finally find the one that I'm looking for. And in the case of the graded one, they look fantastic when
Look
they're graded.
amazing. Yeah, they look amazing.
It's just like a trading card in that sense. So for me, it's sort of it's a case of, it's a really, really accessible entry point for anyone that's looking to
Mm.
start collecting, and in the realm of something that is football connected, and almost trading card sized. These are not big objects,
Mm.
which is perhaps again one of the things that you might level at, say, programs. Programs, take up a lot of room. Um,
Yeah.
Tickets that they take up no more room than cards would anyway.
No,
So.
yeah. So I don't know if you've seen there's a 58 Pele final ticket. Sorry, a 58 debut ticket for sale at the moment, priced at
Oh, really?
twelve hundred
Wow.
dollars.
Okay.
It is graded, but it
Okay.
just shows you like there is maybe potential for movement somewhere. And thinking about that, is there a community? This is kind of another question that came from Twitter. What's the community around tickets and stubs at the moment? Because for soccer cards specifically and stickers, obviously you've got, like, in the last 12 months, it's just blown up and everyone now is an influencer. It's not something I've kind of seen so much. So what's your thoughts on that?
I tend to agree. I think in certain countries you find that a lot of people do this. So Portugal, for example, when I've been searching for tickets in Portugal, one of the things that's really obvious when you go on a marketplace there is that there are hundreds of people that are collecting tickets. So I don't 100% know if that similar subculture really exists in the UK, but I think it's very region specific. So I think it's a case of, in some countries you do find that there are people who really do collect it as almost an art form in itself. Um, in terms of kind of the niche that I've kind of found of collecting debut tickets, I don't know many people that are kind of doing that deliberately. Certainly, I've had people come to me as if I'm some sort of expert, and actually, I'm not an expert. I'm just sort of, just a bloke who's kind of stumbling his way through. I kind of, am at pains to point that out, that sort of, I think a lot of this is about finding things almost kind of through research. It's through good fortune a lot of the time, and it's a lot of it is has a lot of parallels with card collecting, for example. So the way that you might go and grade something, or the way that you might assess how good the condition is, it's exactly the same
Yeah.
as cards. So it's not like I'm necessarily doing something that's so unique that I would feel like a foreigner going from, say, card collecting into ticket collecting. That's
Yeah.
my view on it.
Awesome. Okay. Because I just wondered whether if the influence, or I suppose like you've kind of touched on, you've got to do so much research to know which, if you like, you're looking at specifically rookie tickets, for example, you really have to dig down and find out where the game was, what country it was, and then be willing to go into the country, the marketplace of the country, to find these. And I just think at the moment, like just judging by the number of messages I get about soccer cards, which are relatively easy to research until you start getting to like older stuff, how many questions I get about specific players. And like, to me, it becomes quite clear that the vast majority of people just want to access the product as easily as possible. And I think maybe that's the big difference here, is that you can't access it relatively easy. You do have to do your research, but also there isn't at the moment, there isn't a social media network of Instagrammers, of people on Twitter and things like that to go to. And just hearing other people that have been in the soccer card collecting hobby for decades, if you like, talk about their experiences. This almost sounds very similar to what I'm hearing, whereby there was nobody else to speak to, there was no one to ask the question to and stuff like that. So it's a really interesting kind of like dynamic, a really interesting comparison to make between something that now is moving at pace and something that's kind of not really getting a lot of attention, but maybe will do in the next few years.
Yeah. Who knows with that aspect? It's kind of, for me, I think part of the joy of collecting these tickets is that, that the whole reason for me for kind of finding intrigue in the hobby is that it sort of makes you feel like a little boy again. It's sort of you feel nostalgic for that kind of, I've found that sticker that I'm looking for. It's exactly like that. I'm not buying in order to speculate. I'm buying to collect. 99 times out of 10, 100. It's if the fact that these things rise in value happens, it's kind of, I don't know what I would do with that. It's honestly like that. It's kind of a case of, I'm only spending sort of tens of pounds on some of these purchases with no real expectation of anything in return. And I think for me, it's just the joy of collecting is central to kind of why this has become such a fun endeavor.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think I'm conscious I don't want to take all of your time, because I could talk to you about this for hours. I know you're a busy man, so I want to say a massive thank you to you today for just taking time to come onto the channel. This is your opportunity now to let people know where they can find you if they do want to speak to you, ask you any questions or anything like that. So promote yourself.
So I've got a Instagram account, really is the best way in which to contact me. It's very much in its infancy, but the username is Tickets and Slabs. That's all without any underscores in between it. So please give me a follow and feel free to drop me a message or reach out if you've got any questions whatsoever.
Absolutely. Thanks. Definitely go follow it, guys. There's some amazing, obviously you'll see even better quality, well, definitely better quality images of the tickets than you've seen here today. If you want to see the Maradona ticket up close, then you can do so at Fav's account. So do check that out. Obviously, if you enjoyed the video today, please hit that thumbs up and subscribe for more content like this. And I look forward to speaking to everyone again very soon. Thanks so much, Fav, and we'll call it a day. Cheers.